I'm Eric Siegel, CEO and co-founder of Gooder AI, and this is the first of several short how-to hands-on videos that'll get you started using Gooder AI to valuate your ML models. All the supporting documents and links that you need to follow along are at gooder.ai/hands-on. If you're not familiar with the purpose of Gooder AI and what it means to plan ML model deployment or redeployment by viewing the potential business value interactively, be sure to start with the overview provided on that webpage. In this video, we'll load your test data so you can get to a view like this one, comparing the potential profit, earnings, or savings of your models. In this case, we have 3 models being compared for targeting marketing. Left to right is most likely to buy, down to least likely to buy. That's the X coordinate. That's how it's been ordered according to your model. That's the purpose of the model, is to prioritize and triage. And so now we can draw this decision boundary, say, hey, should I contact the top 10%, 20%, 30%? And then the Y coordinate is money, the monetary performance, the estimated value in terms of profit, savings, or any other KPI or business metric that may matter, which is calculated in part based on these sliders, these parameters, and any and all business metrics, or rather business factors that are subject to change or uncertainty. And that's the kind of hairy can of worms that necessarily gets opened when we move from typical technical metrics like precision, recall, accuracy, area under the curve, to also estimating the monetary performance or the business performance, because it depends on business factors, and you can configure any and all of those. And as you move them, you see that the Y coordinate values are recalculated. The shape of the curve changes, the story changes. That story is telling a business story about the potential deployment choices that you can make in sort of navigating and making an informed decision along with business stakeholders, even those who are not data scientists, your client as a data scientist, your customer, to make an informed, business-informed decision from a business standpoint about whether you're ready to deploy, which model to deploy, exactly how to deploy, largely in terms of establishing that decision boundary, which is why we need these very particular kinds of two-dimensional charts that are interactive. You can set up many other different charts and metrics on the canvas. Here we have a gains curve, pretty typical technical metric. Response deciles. Decision threshold will be a subject of a future video, but I'll just tell you there's a difference between decision threshold and decision boundary. The boundary is the intuitive thing. That's what's depicted visually. And that's what you kind of care about intuitively from left to right. What proportion of cases am I treating, contacting with marketing in this example, investigating or blocking as potentially fraudulent transactions, whatever the decision that you're driving with a predictive model is. Whereas the decision threshold is the value of the model score that you're comparing to drive that decision. You can see examples here, but we'll get into that later. Suffice it to say, this is the intuition, this is the business concept, is the decision boundary, how many to contact. And then when you go to deployment, you'll care about the actual value of the threshold. Okay, so now let's talk about the data requirements. This is all you need for your data. Is in the very simplest case, only 2 columns. Here we've got 4 columns. But basically what this is, it's the scored test data. So whatever data you've already got held aside for a modeling project, right? And this is at any stage in a modeling project. You've got a preliminary model, very early model development, or just pilot project. You've got a mature model potentially ready for deployment. You've got multiple models you're trying to compare. You're monitoring a model already deployed, but you want to do it in terms of monetary or business value rather than only technical metrics, as is typically the case. You're refreshing a model, so you've essentially set up a champion challenger. You want to check it in terms of business value performance to make the determination of whether it's actually ready to update the model in that way. Whatever it is, that same data that's labeled has the dependent variable on the left column in this example, that is the actuals target, the prediction goal thing you're trying to predict, the labels, the ground truth, right? In this case called response for this marketing example. That data set, whatever you're using to evaluate a model and calculate those typical technical metrics, we're going to also now repurpose that exact same data for the purposes of not just evaluating, but valuating, that is to say, calculating the monetary or business performance. So basically that just means you take test data, add a column for the model score. scored test data. In this case, we've stripped out most of the other columns, but you would sort of typically have all the columns for the independent variables, the inputs to the model. You don't need to. Most of them wouldn't be used, but for this within Gooder AI, but usually one or two of them would be. And this is a very simplified case where we're not including any of them. So in the simplest case, you literally only need two columns. One is that dependent variable I just mentioned. The other is the score of the model for each case. In this example, we're comparing three models. We've got two more columns for the other two models. That's it. So once you get your data together that way, and you don't have to go through that exercise if you're using the Gooder AI interface in Python for scikit-learn models or XGBoost, that kind of thing. But if you're not in Python and you just want to like create that test data, go ahead and create it. And now I'm going to show you step by step, starting from scratch to get to a view like this. So we're going to open up Gooder, and that's app.gooder.ai. But all the links and stuff and data sets that I'm showing are available from that one catch-all, gooder.ai/hands-on. So now I've opened up Gooder from scratch. Nothing to see yet. I haven't loaded any data. So I'm on the main page, but saying, look, you got to go evaluate your models. You got to go click and load the data. Clicking this in the middle is the same as clicking the gear shift, which is how you always get to the config setup changes if you want. So now there's basically just two files we need to load. One is the one we just described, and that's this comma separated. Doesn't have to be comma separated, it could be Excel. There's ways to get it from the cloud, but for simplicity here, it's just comma separated value field file. So we open that, and then you always have to secondarily also load a configuration file. Now, configuration is a JSON file, and you can get the kind of catch-all starter config from this webpage, docs.gooder.ai. But again, that's all. Everything like that is linked from gooder.ai/hands-on, and then you'll be able to grab that file. I've already got it. I don't need to download it again. So I'm just going to load that here. Gooder starter configuration. In general, the config files are JSON, but you don't have to edit the JSONs directly. Any and all changes you make in the configuration setup, you can just save it, and it'll save an updated JSON file. Now, I'm not quite ready to look at the monetary performance of this model because I have to tell Gooder just a couple quick things about the file specify. I have to tell it, well, what's the dependent variable? In this case, it's that response column. And then I have to tell it which of the other column or columns correspond to models. And you see model 1, 2, 3. So I say, hey, model 1 is one of the models. For each one, I have to select it and then hit that plus on the right side here. I'll do that for the second model, hit plus, and do it for the third model, hit plus. Now we're done. We can ready to go to the home page on the top right, the little house. And there we see the performance of the model. But you see some of the nomenclatures are different than the initial view I showed. And these settings are different. Typically, the cost per contact will be lower than the win per response, right? But again, these are changeable and configurable. The language is very generic and abstract because we've started with the catch-all config, which is not set up for any particular vertical or use case. Right, so remember what I showed originally is called targeted marketing, and you've got profit per response, cost of contact, percent contacted. Here you've got percent treated, a little more abstract. You've got true positive earnings, false positive cost. You've got a generic name at the top here, but all these things are very easily changed in config. A lot of them in just the main config page. There's a couple other tabs within the config. Again, if you make any of these changes, you can save config. We'll step through those, some of the main settings in another video. But in any case, you can very quickly get to the basics working as we've shown here. So just a couple more quick things. One is that when you're in this view, and we'll also show this config, we'll provide this config for you to try this one as well. But when you right click, you can go to Ask Gooder. That's the chatbot large language model. And it's like a co-pilot, not only for the use of Gooder, but in general for the overall predictive AI project. It's like your sidekick. You can ask them any and all technical or non-technical questions. Should I move the decision boundary? What if I move it here? Should I change these sliders? Is this model ready for deploy? Why does the curve go up and then down? Why is there a Goldilocks zone sweet spot? All those questions. It does great. Check out the video. It's easy to find on our website that demonstrates that chatbot. So that's it for now. Proceed to the next video, which will get a little bit more in depth for some of the other user options that are important for most use cases, but this should get you started.